Okay, I'm live again. I had some technical difficulties the first time I tried this. Anyway, welcome to a very, very special Monday night edition of my Tuesday night Blathercast. Um, in December, I got a phone call from a Hindu woman that I worked with back in the 2020 Tulsi campaign, and she was in tears, and it was kind of what she had to say was kind of heartbreaking. She was talking about what was going on in Bangladesh, and it was a situation I was completely unaware of until that conversation. I told her I'd look a little further into it, and I did. And back on December 10th, Joey Meatballs and I did a live stream talking about the little I knew or the little we knew about the situation in Bangladesh. That was back on December 10th. There'll be a link in the description. Um, anyway, last week I got I got tagged in a tweet from an account on Twitter called Save Hindus. There it is. So Save Hindus, in case you can't read it, said, "I don't know how long I will live. Mother Tulsi Gabbard saved the lives of our Hindus." And he tagged me in that post, apparently overestimating the amount of direct communication I have with Tulsi Gabbard, which in reality is zero, except I'll see her sometimes at book signings and rallies. That's not the point, though. The point was I replied to him. You know, I showed him the live stream that I had done um, back in December, and then it went a bit further because I tweeted this in response, and I said, "My reach is very small, just a few dozen views each week, but it's more than nothing. If anyone wants to come on my Blathercast and talk about what is happening in Bangladesh, please send me a direct message and we could see what we could figure out. The word on this horror needs to spread." Well, if you can see, I'm not sure how well you could see, but I got a reply from a person who calls himself the Perfect Bengali, who said I would take you up on that. Well, we exchanged direct messages, several of them actually, and one thing led to another. And he offered to give me a crash course in in the geopolitics of Bangladesh. And I was very, very happy he was willing to take the time to do that. And I suggested that we have the conversation here on StreamYard, record it, and then perhaps eventually air it. Well, eventually is coming a day later. Well, stand by because you're about to get a really, really amazing education on what's happening in Bangladesh, and it's not a happy story. So, without further ado, I'm gonna play the interview uninterrupted. I'm not going to blather any further. I'm going to share my screen and then get out of the way. Here is the interview I did yesterday regarding Bangladesh and the situation therein. You and I have never met.
We did
you're
not.
far. We have not met. You're far away from here, and
I
several
am.
weeks ago, I back on December 10th, actually, I did a rudimentary covering of what I knew about the situation in Bangladesh. Um, some conversations happened on Twitter. Now some people call it X, and that led to you telling me that you would be able to perhaps educate me on what's going on. And since you're a Bengali, you're certainly better suited to do that than me. I only know what I've read, so I'm going to give you the floor, and please tell us what you want me and the rest of the Blatherverse to know about the situation in Bangladesh.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks for making the time, and thank you for giving us the platform as well. So let's get back to the basics. And just for the ease of understanding, I shall use an example which is closer to you at home. Right. So for the middle and lower middle income population of the USA, one of the housing solution is the trailer parks. Right. So the one of the biggest problems the American trailer parks face is they do not own the land under their trailers or the houses. Right. So you might buy a trailer or you might build a house, but the land is owned by Mr. Buffett or BlackRock or someone else. So if you cannot pay the rent anymore, you will have to move with your trailer, or you will have to pick your house up and go somewhere else. So if you do not have the land, and if you want to build a house there, the only person who profits is who is in the business of building houses, no one else. Same thing
I'm
applies.
actually familiar. I'm familiar with this because my daughter recently lived in a trailer park, and it's actually a big deal. The people who own the land, in the trailer parks, it's a big issue here. So I know exactly what you're
Exactly.
talking about.
Right. So let's translate that example to the idea of democracy. So democracy is the house that needs to be built on the land of awareness and education. So if the population does not have the awareness, does not have the education, building that democracy does not make any sense because they cannot make the informed choice. They will, the population, if they're not have, if they are not self-aware, if they're not educated, they will always be biased and influenced by fake news, fake narratives, or clickbait newses, and they will be pushed to one direction, which may not be at the end of the day for the greater good of the society. So if you want a functioning democracy, the first thing you need is education awareness. If you do not have that, building that democracy will only be profitable for the people who preach democracy, not the people who are living in the democracy. Now, that applies for pretty much all of the global south, right? Let's look at the Middle East. The Arabians, they're a tribal people. So if you look at the Arabian names, yeah, X, Ibn Y, Al, ABCD, right? So which is X is the son of Y, and after Al comes ABCD, which is the tribe they belong to, right? So when you impose democracy on a tribal people, it's not going to make much of a difference because they will only vote where their leader of the tribe will tell them to. So the essence, the idea of democracy gets lost, right? So I would like to quote Mr. Putin. I know this is going to be very unpopular when I do that. He went to the United Nations and he said that exporting political ideology does not work. We are the biggest example of that. He meant the Soviet Union, exporting communism everywhere. Right. So he said that exporting political ideology is a bad idea. We are the example of it. But our brothers in the West are failing to learn from our mistakes. Right. Okay. So the global South, they do not have the awareness of going in of adopting the Western version of democracy. So when that is imposed on them, it only leads to chaos. Without the education, without the awareness, democracy does not work.
I have to say, it's interesting that you use the phrase imposed on them because people who support democracy believe that democracy is the actual will of the people. So it's interesting to me that when that there's a concept of imposing democracy. Please go on.
Right. I mean, I'm gonna quote another example. In one of your elections, I forgot exactly which one. The person who owned the popular vote was not the president.
That's happened
That,
several times, actually. Yeah, yeah.
exactly. So how does that work? Right. So if you are winning the popular vote, right? So more people are voting for you. You're still not the president. So where is the democracy?
It's a little more complicated. I think we're actually a constitutional republic. Not a, if we were pure democracy, the popular vote would decide the president. But we're a
Exactly. So
collection of states, and each state has
right. So
it's a whole
that's
formula.
where that's where comes in the idea of the electoral colleges. So democracy, the original Greek democracy, it went to the USA in your version. You adopted it to your constitution, which is perfectly fine. So the bipartisan or the or multi-party democracy, it if it is imposed on a people which is not politically aware, which is not adequately educated, it's not going to help them in the long run. The only people it's going to help is the NGOs who preach democracy and who get funded by USAID and everyone else. and they basically serve the the deep state agendas and so on. You understand that?
Oh, I
So
understand. I understand very well. There's been several wars fought about this, and many of the people here were not for those wars. But please go on.
right. So moving on, let's go back to Bangladesh. So yes, Bangladesh is a very small country, like 55,000 square miles, which is nothing. It's smaller than a lot of American states. So I mean, you can fit couple of Bangladesh just into Texas. Forget the rest of it. Right, but our population is almost 200 million. So in that kind of densely populated country, uh, the effect of any kind of polarization in the population becomes very big. So in in a big country like USA, where it is pretty much distributed population, even if there are some unrest, so there is a riot in Chicago, that riot will stay in Chicago. It will not go to New York, right? But in Bangladesh, if there is a riot in one part of the country, it will very soon spread to the rest of the country. So it's like a bundle of dynamite. So you light one stick and the entire thing blows up. Right. So that is one of the big problems. So that is why it is not always advisable to have extreme freedom of speech, because freedom of speech is not the freedom of saying whatever the hell you want. Freedom of speech comes with a bigger responsibility of having a responsible speech. Right. So if if there are bad actors, if the bad actors take the opportunity of freedom of speech, and then inside the people, it becomes very difficult for any government to control the situation. So whatever happened in July last year, July. So the big problem was the reservations in the government jobs. That's what the students, or the so-called students or the protesters were protesting about. If we go back a bit more, in 1971 we had a pretty bloody liberation war. We used to be East Pakistan. We used to be, like, after the British left us in 1947, the British left India and Pakistan. Pakistan were in two parts, East and West Pakistan, and there was India in the middle. So East
With
and West,
1,000 miles of India in the middle, as I recall.
yes, 1100 miles to be precise.
Yeah.
Right. So which is obviously a logistical nightmare, and which is obviously a completely different people under the same umbrella. And it went to even worse situation when the West Pakistani leaders, they decided to impose their language as the state language of the entire country. Especially when the East Pakistani population were the majority. So we are Bangla speakers. Yeah, we are called the Bengalis. We speak Bangla, but they wanted to impose Urdu on us. So obviously we did not appreciate that, and we fought back. And that was the beginning of our liberation struggles, which led to 1971. Like, the East Pakistan based party, Bangladesh, like then East Pakistan Awami League, and currently Bangladesh Awami League, they won the election in a landslide margin. So they won like 260 something seats of the National Assembly out of 300, which is absolute majority. But they still did not hand over the power to Army League, and they decided on the military approach. They called it the Operation Jackpot. They cracked down on the Bengali people, and in 9 months, they killed 3 million people, which is, I mean, if you compare it to the Nazi Germans, like, in 6 years they killed 6 million Jews all over Europe. Right. But in 9 months, they killed 3 million. So you must give the Pakistanis the award of efficiency, of genocidal efficiency. Right. And as during the 1971 war, the West somehow decided to side with Pakistan because India was helping us and India was a Russian ally. So we did not even get the recognition of the genocide. So 3 million of our people died. More than 260,000 women were raped and sexually abused. We still did not get the recognition of a genocide. We are still looking for it. Right. So, I mean, so it forces us to say things like, which is, I mean, for saying things like this out loud will land me in a lot of trouble. But as it was brown people who died, no one cares. Right.
Well, I wouldn't say
Yeah.
no one, but I know what you're saying. Now, on top of all that, wasn't there a natural disaster, a cyclone, or
1970, yes, 1970, there was a cyclone, which was badly mishandled by the Pakistani government, the central government in West Pakistan, and that led to a lot of death as well, which basically led to the general mistrust in the East Pakistani people on the West Pakistani governance, and they opted to vote for Awami League. And they said, enough is enough. We want our people in the assembly, and that's how Awami League won the election. But which only led to another 3 million death. Now, the person, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, who led the war, who led the struggles, who led the liberation movement, he came back. He took charge of the country, and it was destroyed. It was pretty much rubble, like what you see, like it was almost like the Gaza that you saw after the Israeli airstrikes. He started rebuilding from there, and we were hit by famine, which is very common after a war. And as we did not have any cash and we needed stuff, we had to resort to bartering. We did not have any dollar to buy anything. The only thing we had of value was jute. Yeah, we produce a lot of jute. So out of desperation, when he tried to buy some wheat from Cuba in exchange of jute, we were hit by American food sanction because we made a deal with Cuba, which and some other factors led to the famine of 1973, 1974, which again hit his popularity because, as you know, when there is no education and awareness, it's very easy to manipulate the population. Right? So in 1975, he was assassinated with his entire family by some, what do you call it, by some army officers who were still pro-Pakistan, who were not quite happy with this split from Pakistan, and which some people say were facilitated by the US Embassy in Dhaka. Anyway, that is to be, I mean, we are yet to look into the cables and the wires from that period of time. But anyway, he was killed, and Bangladesh was being run by anti-Bangladesh forces who were pro-Pakistan, who were not happy with the liberation. Now, their only political capital was being anti-Indian, which is a geographical lunacy, I would say, because when you are, let's put it this way. So there is USA, you have Canada to your north, and you have Mexico to your south. Now, USA, as the bigger country and the more powerful country, you can dictate terms with Canada and Mexico. Right, you can dictate terms. Now, Bangladesh is a very small country with India to the three sides of it. So whatever USA can do with Mexico and get away with it, India can do much more. When there is a country you surround from three sides, you have all kind of leverage because we cannot take our country up and go to somewhere else. We have to be there. Right. So we have to thank the British for that, for dividing the Indian subcontinent like that. So anyway, moving on. Let's fast forward now. As a what do you call, as a pick me up, or as a scheme of rehabilitation of the people who fought for liberation, who sacrificed their lives, their houses, their everything for the liberation. There was a clause in the constitution that families of the martyrs or the freedom fighters will have a reservation for the government jobs as a pick me up, which is not unheard of. That is everywhere. I mean, reservations are everywhere. You have reservations for the VA. Yeah, for the VA, you have reservations in different places.
yes.
Reservations are everywhere. So now that became the issue. And currently there is this, interim government, so-called interim government, unelected, self-imposed, which is completely unconstitutional, They are running the country, and it's headed by the Nobel laureate Dr. Mohammad Yunus, who
Now,
is basically
what time period? What year are we talking about right now? What year is
we're,
this?
we're talking about 2024 July and August.
Oh, okay, recent. Okay, very good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. The current government, the current so-called unelected, not unconstitutional government that we have. So the loan shark, the world-renowned loan shark, Dr. Mohammad Yunus, who is running, high interest loan shark, loan schemes in USA as well, called Grameen USA. Look into it; you will know what I'm talking about. Yeah, he is the chief advisor of the interim government, and one of his key advisors, Mr. Asif Nazrul, he's the legal advisor of this government. Now I'm coming back to the point of not having awareness in the population. So before all this happened, he would go on various talk shows on TV channels and everywhere else, and he would say things like there are 2.4 million Indians employed in Bangladesh. They should be driven out, and Bangladeshi students should get those jobs. Now, these kind of narratives obviously will incite a people which is plagued by unemployment. Quite simple. Like when you wake up today and you hear a reputed and respectable person say things like 2.4 million foreigners are working in, sorry, 2.6 million foreigners are working in this country and we are not getting the jobs, obviously they are going to get incited. They will get angry. They got angry. They went out in the streets. They toppled the government. Yeah. That person, Mr. Asif Nazrul, he's the advisor of the current government now. It had been 7 months. We are yet to see those 2.6 million Indians that he said were employed in Bangladesh. So he basically lied. No one held him to justice for this, for remarks like this. So when these things happen, when in a population like that, you cannot have absolute freedom of speech. It is very unhealthy. I know this is very unpopular what I'm saying, but freedom of speech comes with responsibility. So if you are exercising your freedom, you must carry the responsibility as well, which
It's a
no.
big issue in this country as well. I mean, the classic version of the limits of freedom of speech is you can't yell fire in a crowded theater, and of course, that just makes sense. You don't want to do that, but there's a line, and in this country we're exploring that line because there's a lot of what they call hate speech, and hate speech can lead to violence. So in a way, that kind of speech is like shouting fire in a crowded theater because it leads to serious and unexpected consequences, or perhaps
Exactly.
expected consequences. So
Exactly.
I do have one question though. The little bit of reading that I did, knowing that I was going to be talking to you today, I see that there was a woman who was in charge in Bangladesh and is now in exile in India. Am I right about that?
Yes, she is the daughter of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, who led us to our liberation, Miss Sheikh Hasina. She is in exile right now. Yes, true. She was in power for almost 16 years now. And yes, not all the elections were completely unquestionable. I will give you that. But what election is ever completely blameless?
Believe me, we know that very well here, unfortunately.
Exactly. So if the US elections are not completely without blemish, what can we expect from a third world, one of the countries far in the global south? What can we expect from there?
Of course, yeah.
Right. So right. But there was progress. When I say progress, you as an American, you know how much land the government owns in your country. The government owns a lot of land in your country, right?
Well, arguably, they own all the land because, for say, I own, and I say own in finger quotes, my house. But
Yeah,
yes,
but you have to pay a tax. Yes,
exactly. I pay
right.
thousands of
So
dollars every year to the
right,
city.
which does
So
not which does not make any sense to me anyway. Like
right,
I
so
mean,
I'm
you bought a
essentially
land.
I'm essentially renting my house from the government.
Exactly. No, you're renting the land that your house is
Right,
on.
right,
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 but despite that, there are like a scores of land that is owned by your government, right? Which is there is no population, no building, no infrastructure. It's just federal land or state level land. It's owned by the government,
right.
right? Now let's talk about your homeless problem. For a country which is the number one economy in the world, the strongest democracy in the world, strongest military in the world, should you have a homeless problem?
No, of course not.
Especially when like the middle of your country is basically barren, there is no one for miles. I've seen listings like there are like ranches, plots of lands, they're being sold for $600 per acre, which is nothing.
Right.
So when there are like resources like that, should you have homelessness? And
We
this
shouldn't
is
have homelessness. I mean, some of the homeless want to live out in the streets. We can't really account for that. But at the very least, we should have the capacity to house people who want to be housed. And we
exactly.
don't.
And this is not just the USA, it's everywhere. It's in the UK, in the Europe, there are homeless people everywhere. Like in I have seen in European winter, I have seen people sleeping on the streets, sleeping in the subway stations. It should not be like that. We
No.
have homelessness as well in Bangladesh. Sheikh Hasina, she has stepped up and she said, I have people sleeping on the streets. That is a failure for the state. That is a failure for the country. So, why should the state own land when there are citizens sleeping on the streets? So, to eradicate homelessness, she came up with this scheme that housing for all. She carved out lands that was owned by the state and developed houses like housing projects, community housing projects for the homeless people. And it was not rented to them or anything. It was given to them, full ownership. Not like USA, like they will have to pay a tax, like rent for the land for the rest of their life. No, full ownership. Now, how many countries, how many developing countries from the third world can even attempt to do something like that? And
Right.
that takes a lot of courage. She did that. Then comes women. Then comes women empowerment. She increased the reservation of seats in the National Assembly for the women. Right? She was keeping the Islamists at bay. We had a terrorist attack in Dhaka, Holy Artisan. I'm sure you have read up on it. Yeah, ISIS took responsibility for it and everything. She cracked down on them hard. Just even 8 months back, it was okay for women to be out in the streets, say 10 p.m. in the night. So yesterday was yesterday. Oh no, sorry. Yeah, yesterday it was International Women's Day, 8th of March, and we celebrated Women's Day in Bangladesh by 29 reported rape cases. So women are being assaulted, women are being hunted, they're being hounded. And Hizbut Tahrir, the UK-based organization that is banned as a terrorist organization in multiple countries, they're calling for a Khilafat state like Afghanistan, and they're doing it out in the open. They're brandishing ISIS flags, and the government is not doing anything. So this is what is happening right now. Yes, Sheikh Hasina was not perfect. No one is perfect. No government is perfect. Yeah, but when it comes to governments, you choose between the lesser of the evils. Because government, they are inherently evil. Let's face it. They tax you and you cannot question it. Right. So when it comes to governments, you choose the lesser of the evils. So what we have right now is we are basically heading towards the situation of Afghanistan. It was a strong economy. It was being dubbed as the emerging economic tiger of Asia. We are going great. Even during the COVID, we had our GDP was going up. We have a production based economy, so
I mean, if you go into any clothing store in USA, Gap, Walmart, anywhere, you will see clothes made in Bangladesh. Right. So we stop making clothes. A lot of people will go naked in the world. So we are the number one denim producing country in the world. So we were doing economically fine even during the COVID when the entire world was struggling. But right now, our GDP, which was supposed to be 7%, even last July, it is down to 4 right now. There is no law and order. People are being chased and murdered. The country is being run by a mob. And the law enforcement is non-existent because the so-called July revolution that we had, it killed around 4,000 policemen, which obviously the government does not acknowledge. So the missing police people, they are simply branded AWOL, like they're absent without leave. So no one admits that they were killed. And in the meantime, the Islamists, the Islamists, they're being recruited straight to the police force as an auxiliary of the jihadist forces. Now, let's go back a bit further. Mr. Volker Turk, this American gentleman who works for the United Nations, he basically, straight up admitted a couple of days back that he threatened indirectly the Bangladesh army to stay out of whatever is happening in Bangladesh in July. So when the government asked army for help to take care of to help settle the political situation and the lawlessness, the army did not do anything, and they basically enabled the jihadists to take everything over. And if you look at the photos, you will see what was happening. I will send you some photos later. So there is like no law in the land right now. Bangladesh is slowly going towards a failed jihadist state, something like Afghanistan. Women are being pushed into the houses, they're being killed. Anyone who is pro Bangladesh right now, like pro 71, pro liberation, is being hounded, they're being rounded up. Yeah, so that's what is happening there right now.
Oh boy. Wow. And for some reason we're not hearing about this in this country. I don't understand why. I have a friend who's Hindu who talked to me in December, and she told me about this. So I found out what I could at the time, which was very, very little, and I talked about it, back then. But this detail you're providing, it's just horrifying. Do you have any perception of the possibility of what a good outcome could be from all this?
From this, there is no possible good outcome.
Oh boy.
There is no possible good outcome because the polarization is at an extreme right now. There are so-called Islamic scholars in Bangladesh right now who are calling for a service charge for the non-Muslims to live in the country.
Wow.
So whoever is not a Muslim, they will have to pay an extra tax to live in the country.
Huh.
Now, their argument is the majority of the population is Muslim, so it has to be an Islamic state. Now, if we wanted to be an Islamic state, as a people, if we wanted to be that, why did we separate from the Islamic Republic of Pakistan?
Right. Right.
We went for our liberation on the basis of secularism. Right. So being secular does not mean you do not have religion. Being secular means everyone has their right to religion.
Correct.
On the US dollar, it is written that in God we trust. But the US Constitution, it ensures the right of every person's religion or the lack of it.
Right, but freedom of religion is one of the basic backbones of our Constitution, of course.
Exactly, because
people call us a Christian country because in God we trust and stuff like that. But everybody's free to practice as they will, which obviously is
Exactly.
the case in all over the world.
Exactly. So that is what they're curbing right now. Hindus are being persecuted. There is a Hindu leader who protested about the persecution, and he's in prison for almost 4 or 5 months right now, without bail, without any specific charges. He is being charged with sedition and treason, but baseless charges. He's stuck in prison.
Right. His real crime is opposing the current government.
His real crime is not even opposing the current government. He protested the persecution of the Hindus.
Right.
Then again, it's not about Hindus. Minorities don't have a religion. Minorities are always persecuted.
Right. Wow. You know, and people confuse, by the way, people confuse Islamism with Islam, but they're not the same. And so, you know, when you push back against Islamism, you're accused in this country of being Islamophobic, but it's not true. You know, you're not talking about the religion Islam. You're talking about just a particular faction of people who practice Islam who are aggressive. Do I have that right?
I'll take this conversation to a personal level. So half my family lives in the USA. Yeah, half my family lives in the USA. So on the East Coast, every state has some family. I have some family in every state in East Coast, starting from North Carolina up to Massachusetts. I have someone everywhere. Right. So when I go to USA, I have to visit all 7, 8 states. I don't have a choice. Right. They're practicing Muslims. They're having a prosperous life. No one is stopping them. I personally currently I'm in a white country as well. Yeah. I live in a predominantly white country in Europe. I practice my Islam. So today you had to wait a bit for this session because it's Ramadan and I took a bit of time to break my fast.
Yes.
Now, Islam, the root of Islam is the Quran, our holy book. And our holy book explicitly says there is no forcing religion. It explicitly says, La ikraha fid din. It translates to there is no forcing of religion. It explicitly says, Lakum dinukum waliyadin in Arabic, translates to you stick to your beliefs, I stick to mine. And forget everything. Forget everything. If I am not respecting your faiths, right, I'm not respecting mine either. As
Right.
simple
That's
as
really
that.
beautiful, actually.
So when I'm insulting your faith, I'm welcoming you to insult my faith. So basically, I'm insulting my faith by insulting yours. So what God is a God that tells one people to kill another?
Right. Right. That not the nicest God. It's got to be better gods up there.
That is no God.
No.
So now that is the essence of Islam. But the current brand of Islam that we have right now, it is a bit problematic. And those people, they have taken over Bangladesh.
Whew. This is a very important
However,
conversation. I appreciate you sharing all this with me. This has been very educational for me, and I'm sure the people who are going to see this are going to know a lot more after they listen. I mean, please go on. I'm not saying you're done or anything, but you're going
yeah,
into
so
areas that I had no idea about, and I really do appreciate it. So please continue.
so one of the biggest sins in Islam is usury, like charging interest on loans. Right. So this is the funny thing. Our Islamist leaders, they're happy to have a loan shark at the helm of the country. So, what kind of Islamic state are we going towards? Now, whoever is asking questions like this, they're being charged with a lot of things and being thrown in the prison if they're not beaten up and killed already. So yesterday, 3 brothers were chased. Yeah, one of them were active in the Awami League politics. Yeah, with the Awami League politics. And he and his 2 brothers were chased by this Islamist mob. They tried to seek shelter in a mosque, but they beheaded them in the mosque. They slaughtered them. So it was 3 brothers dead on the spot. That is what is happening in Bangladesh right now.
A person who claims to be Muslim beheaded another human being in a mosque.
In a mosque.
Am I missing something there, or that's wow?
Yeah, that's what is happening right now.
That's the most absurd desecration of a religion. Wow.
So I mean, one of the main reasons, one of the main narratives that was used to incite the mob for the regime change, it was the lack of human rights, the lack of basic human rights. So after the so-called, change of regime or the fall of the fascist, the so-called fall of the fascist, I have videos I can send you where the army personnel, the soldiers, they sat a young guy down and they're cutting his hair because his hair is too long. A civilian kid is getting a haircut from the army soldiers because his hair is too long.
Huh.
That's what is happening there.
Yeah,
So there is absolute lawlessness. Well, what do you expect from an unconstitutional government? Right. So this government, they are not answerable to anyone. They are not elected by anyone, so they are not accountable to anyone.
wow. I'm very solution oriented, but I don't know what can be done about this other than people need to be aware of it. I mean, that's the tiny little part we're doing right now is, we'll eventually broadcast this and people will know more. But there's all these international organizations. This kind of pisses me off, actually. Where's Amnesty International? Where's the United Nations? Where are all these international organizations that are supposed to promote stability and freedom around the world? Their resources are being misused horribly. This should be right at the top of the list. I know it's not the only trouble spot in the world. Obviously, we have Ukraine, we have Israel, we have things happening in Africa, but this should be right up there. And it would break my heart to think it's only because it's brown people. That's just ridiculous. We're all people, and
but that's the fact. Let's put it this way. So one of the basis of setting up United Nations, and everything else, that was the end of colonization, right?
Right.
Okay. So right now, India has the ability to colonize England. Economically or militarily, India can go and colonize England. They have the ability. Right? Now,
right.
why is it illegal now? So it was okay when the English went and colonized India, killed people. It was okay then, but now you made a charter at the UN that you cannot colonize anymore, and now it's all okay.
It was never okay, but on a human level. But they had this thing might make right.
Let me ask you one question.
Sure.
So, to the Western psyche, to the Western common sense, Churchill is a hero, Hitler is the bad guy, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's pretty simple, right? Now,
yes.
Churchill is responsible for more deaths than Hitler.
Because Churchill was in charge of the colonization during the British Empire, is what you're saying, I guess.
So right now, we have neo-Nazis in Europe who are using this narrative and saying the only reason Hitler got in trouble is because he killed white people. And I'm sorry, we have to agree to that.
Right.
Just in Bengal, Churchill held back the grains. He caused the Great Bengal Famine of 1942-1943. Yeah, and it is estimated that up to 80 million people were dead. Just in Bengal, just in those 2-3 years. And when the British governor stationed in India wrote home to England to release the grains, that people are dying and they need to release the grains, Churchill put that letter in a non-important pile with a side note, then why does not Gandhi die?
Oh
But
boy.
yeah, Churchill is the good guy, Hitler is the bad guy.
Well, it doesn't mean Hitler's the good guy, but I see what you're saying about Churchill not exactly being a saint. The thing, the reason he was our ally in World War II is because his interests aligned with ours, and apparently our interests had nothing to do with Southern Asia, which is embarrassing.
That became your interest in 1971 when the Americans mobilized their 7th Fleet in support of Pakistan. While
That's the other thing
Pakistan
too.
was Pakistan
Why would
was
they?
launching.
By what logic would they set up East Pakistan and West Pakistan 1,100 miles apart? How could anybody think that could possibly be a successful situation with 1,100 miles of India right in between two countries sharing a government? So the Bangladesh should have been set up in 1947. Well, obviously it should have been set up and thousands of years ago and never been colonized. But once you add the reality of British colonization, that's just a very, very misbegotten arrangement to set up one country that has 1,000 miles of another country in between. That would essentially be like Mexico and Canada being one country with the United States in between.
Well, right now they are like that with all the tariffs and everything.
Yeah, yeah, that's very true. We're not very popular with our neighbors right now. We'll see what
Right.
happens with that.
No, by the way, don't get me wrong. I have nothing against the Americans. They're beautiful people, and the way they built USA, what makes USA the most powerful country in the world? It's not your army. It's not your money. It's because USA itself is a mini world. It is built by the brightest and the best and the rebels of the rest of the world. So that's what makes USA so special and so beautiful.
Among other things, we have
Among other things.
yeah, we did steal the land, we did enslave people, and then for a time we had the technological advantage. Maybe we still do. China's catching up to us rapidly. But hey, I'm American. I don't like everything my government does. One administration, another administration. I've been critical of all of them, but I live here and I like my way of life. So from a selfish point of view,
And
I want
in
stability.
the same time, you have the right to sit in your living room and say that out loud that you do not like everything that your government does. My people in Bangladesh, they do not have that right.
That right was especially apparent to me the night of Trump's first inauguration back in 2017 in January. My girlfriend and I went and saw a concert, and the drummer of the opening band was a female drummer. She was really good. And at one point, she stood up from the drums, turned her back to the audience, and in big letters on the back of her T-shirt, the word said, "Fuck Trump." And my reaction to that was, okay, fine, that's how you feel, and you're exercising your right to say that, but be happy you have a right to say, fuck Trump, which is pretty much the nastiest thing you could say to anybody in this country with no repercussions. So I get what you're saying, and people in this country don't appreciate the freedoms they have. They abuse it to a large extent. So yeah, people being jailed and persecuted, and oh god, I don't even know what to say about what's happening in Bangladesh. I didn't know what to say before this conversation, and I really don't even know what to say now.
So now that you mentioned that, so this kind of liberties and liberties and freedoms that you have as a people in your society, you have that because you are expected to have the self-awareness and the basic education to exercise that. So when your agencies like USAID and everyone else are going to the global south and imposing those liberties, forcing the local governments to grant those liberties on a people who are not self-aware, who are not educated, yeah, and who have other priorities, it becomes problematic. Now, personally, I do not care who sleeps with who, but for all the what do you call it, for all the agencies, all the development agencies, LGBTQ is a very big issue, right? So
Right.
when you go to a when one of your agencies, they're going to a country which is 90% Muslim, yeah, where homosexuality is a sin and a crime, like all religions outlawed homosexuality, right? It is not permitted in any religion. So when the agencies are going to the countries in the global south and imposing these ideas on the local governments that do this or we cut your funding and you get sanctioned, it does not work like that. So we are back to that original discussion that we started with. The only guy that profits is who is selling democracy, not the people who are buying the democracy.
Are we currently funding the current so-called government of Bangladesh?
Well, USAID is stopped. I do not know what else, like which other way they are funding it. But one of the biggest problems that we have right now is uh, the UN stooges like Volker Turk and everyone else. Yeah, they are still, they're still using their position and their offices to destabilize the situation. So yeah, they're parroting the regime lies, they're doctoring data, they're engineering reports, and they're basically, feeding more coal to the fire. So I
By
say
by
it is time.
destabilizing. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I say it is time. It is time Mr. President pulls out of UN and hold them accountable.
Tom, our president or Bangladesh president?
I mean, come on, the only president that matters.
Right. Okay. I was trying to cover all bases. Yeah, pulling out of the UN would be a very, very bold move. There's a lot of talk pulling out of NATO right now, but NATO has nothing to do with your situation. But pulling out of that's the thing. The UN is not. This is exactly the situation you've described in the past 50 minutes. Is exactly what the UN is supposed to be for. There should be peacekeepers there. Something. The people need to be protected.
UN was established in 1948 in the current form. There was League of Nations before that. Let's discount that. But in the current form, they're established in 1948, right?
Yeah, after World War II. Yeah, around 48.
Yeah. So in the last, how many? 52 and 25. That's 77 years. In last 77 years, show me one good thing that UN did.
Huh.
One good thing with a sustainable good outcome.
I don't want to open up a can of worms because it's we could spend several hours on this discussion. But as Jew, I do think the UN establishing the state of Israel was a good thing. But I know that that a lot of the world does not agree with that. But outside of that, I have nothing that comes to mind.
But
really.
was it really the UN who set up Israel?
Well, it had. I mean, the catalyst was that the UN voted for the partition plan.
Yeah, but it was Lord Balfour.
Balfour Declaration. Yeah, the Balfour Declaration preceded that. I guess the UN kind of piggybacked onto that.
Even just ratified it. Even just ratified it. So even did not even do that. What you just gave them credit for. So the British did what the British did that with the help of the French and everyone else, and even just said, yeah, okay, that we are okay with that. That's basically it.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, I grew up thinking that the conflict in Korea wasn't an American war, that it was United Nations troops, but I don't know enough about the ins and outs of that to give the UN a good mark on that. And I'm sure it was mostly the United States, just like it's mostly the United States doing all the NATO stuff now.
Yeah, so that's there. So there are
No,
Europeans.
so I can't name anything else. In fairness to the UN, I haven't really looked for anything else, but nothing else comes to mind. So
Exactly. I mean, we'll pick this up 1 month from now. You look for a month. Show
okay.
me one good thing that UN did.
I just need a week, but I'll put it out. I'll put that out there. That's a great challenge that I'm going to share with people, and let me see if anybody comes up with anything good.
So apart from establishing and upholding the neo-imperialistic ideals, yeah, and safeguarding it, what did UN do? So look at the 5 permanent members, right?
Right.
So apart from China, who really, like, even, come on, China, you cannot call China global south.
No,
You
in
cannot
fact,
call China global south.
when I was a
Right?
kid, it wasn't even China. It was Taiwan was one of the first. Even though Mao had already taken over China, they gave Chiang Kai-shek the seat on the as a permanent member. It wasn't until the Nixon administration that we recognized China. And
Exactly.
and
So
moved
the
it.
5 members that you have, that UN has as a permanent member, the all powerful, who can decide the fate of the world, do they like, how much of the world do they actually represent? Now, why should the entire global south be left at the mercy of those 5 countries? So how is that different from the colonization times?
The only way I would be able to justify that is if somehow they made life better for the global south. But apparently,
How
they're
exactly?
they're either doing nothing to make it better or actually making it worse. So your point's
How
well taken.
exactly? Let's put it this way. Let's go back 500 years when the colonization started. Did any of the global south come to Europe to colonize?
No.
Europe went everywhere else. We did not need Europe. Europe needed us.
Right.
They went. So when the British went to India, Indian economy was 25% of the global GDP. Look at India right now. So it really annoys us, the people of the colonies. It really annoys us when we see the West sit on their high horse from their high towers, sit on the loots that they got from our part of the world, the economy they built on our blood and sweat, and lecture us about human rights and democracy.
Wow.
It really triggers a few switches in us. You want to talk, like, I mean, there are a lot of people in the West who wants us to go back to where we are from. We are happy to go back. Promise us that you are not going to meddle with our business. You're going to leave us alone.
Right.
You keep your democracy. We don't want it. Your brand of democracy, you keep it. We will figure ourselves out. Like, you came to us. When I say you, I'm talking to the West, not to you. Yeah, don't get offended.
I'm not at all offended. I'm an old American hippie, so I look at things very differently than my government has for a very long time.
Right. So the new world order, the new world of freedom and everything, it is basically the USA and the UN. They just picked up the reins of the colonization from Europe. That's about it. Say 400 years back, Europeans went to our part of the world in the guise of business people, and they started colonizing. 200 years back, it was the bishops and the padres. They were used to colonize Africa. And right now, it is the banks. So we are still colonized,
right,
in one form or another. So let's make it a fair fight. Take out that charter about colonization from the UN, and we might have a thing or two to say about that.
Well, that sounds like a good start. It sounds like a good start, but that's only a baby step. I'm going to have a very naive question right now. This is based on I don't want to call myself ignorant, except that again, it's not something I've looked into very deeply, except recently. My impression is that Hindus are being, the current situation in Bangladesh, with the anarchy. It's the Hindus who are suffering greatly. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
what?
So it
So
just yesterday, I mean, it's not just the Hindus, anyone who is not a Muslim.
right.
So anyone who is not a Muslim and anyone who is pro Bangladesh.
Well, there's a big, powerful Hindu country right to the west of Bangladesh. Is there
Well,
any
on three
talk
sides
of?
of Bangladesh, not to west, on three sides, west, north, and east.
Correct, of course.
Yeah.
Is there any talk of India intervening in all this?
No, India inherently is not an aggressor. So I mean, if India had the history of being an aggressor, what Pakistan had been doing to them since 1965, there would be no Pakistan left today.
India wouldn't be the aggressor in this case. Wouldn't India be more like a defender, defending innocent people being attacked? I understand India doesn't want to cross borders and invade, but if
Let's just say India not as proactive about Hindus as Israel for the Jews.
got it.
So
Yeah.
if there is a group of, I mean, we all know the story of the African Jews that were rescued to Israel from Sudan, I think, who were kept in the King David Hotel for a while. I forgot the exact specific details, but a group of African Jews, they were being persecuted, and Israeli commandos, they went and they brought the entire group home to Israel.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that, but go on. Yeah. So what
Yeah.
about that? I mean, obviously people want to live in their homeland, but if the homeland has become hopelessly anarchistic and dangerous, will India take in refugees?
Well, they're not really being allowed to do that either, because the border forces in Bangladesh, they are very alert, because if that passing starts, it will become an international incident, and then UN or any other global body, they will have a reason, or they will be forced to react, right? So they are putting a hold on that, and some Hindus, they tried to cross the border and flee, they were shot.
Okay. Well, earlier in the conversation, you said there's no good outcome, but somehow there has. I mean, this situation can't sustain itself. What do you picture the situation being 2 years from now?
Afghanistan.
Yeah. So fundamentalist country where no freedom of speech, and women have no rights, and anybody.
Women already have no rights.
Oh, all right.
They already have no rights. So they are if they're being questioned about the. So let's put it this way: some guy, he verbally assaulted a girl, based on what she was wearing. Yeah.
Okay.
The girl filed a police complaint. That guy was arrested, and the Islamist mob, they attacked the police station. They staged a stay up movement there, and they released him from the police.
Wow. Yeah, I actually heard about that.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
So women, they already have no rights. Freedom of speech only if it suits the government narrative. And right now, what is happening is, the reason I confidently say that 2 years from now it's Afghanistan, because if you look at what happened in Afghanistan when Taliban took over, the first casualty of the Taliban takeover was the Afghanistan army. They were replaced by the Talibani jihadists, right? So right now, the Islamist mob, they are being pitted against the army.
It sounds like Syria is going in the same direction these days.
I don't think Syria is going anywhere. Syria is gone.
Huh. Yeah.
I mean,
Wow. Okay, well, we've been talking for over an hour now, and I definitely don't want to cut you short. If you have more to say, I'd like you to say it. But
so I'm gonna end my rant, my blathering. I'm gonna end my blathering on a
this is,
on
hey,
a
this is you are a pioneer. This is the first international blathering. We are now global blatherers, and I thank you, Perfect Bengali, for making the blather international. I really appreciate that. So
It
go
had
on,
been my
blather on,
pleasure.
sir.
So the last point I want to make is the whole thing that is happening. It is. I will point a finger at Pakistan as well. Since the August mishap in Bangladesh, the Pakistani ambassador in Bangladesh is very active. He is having way too many sit downs with government officials. He is going into the cantonments and having meetings with army officials. He's traveling the country everywhere. Yeah. So and suddenly there is a new exemption for Pakistani ships in Bangladesh. So whatever ship is coming to Bangladesh from Pakistan, they're exempted from a search. So they can practically send anything. And we all know what is Pakistan's chief export: terrorism.
Huh.
Yeah. So yeah. And 1971, when they lost the war and 93,000 of their soldiers surrendered, there was a an accord signed in Simla in India, which Pakistan agreed defeat, and they promised to try their army officers for war crimes, and they promised to pay reparations. We did not receive a cent of reparation. The army officers who were responsible for war crimes were rewarded handsomely. And in 1974, they made an amendment to their constitution, which made provisions for Bangladesh to join Pakistani Federation again when it is free of the influence of foreign forces. So, being a Bangladeshi, I believe that we should not even have diplomatic relations with them.
Right.
Yeah, but yeah, so it is the axis of Pakistan and the deep state who is running havoc in Bangladesh just because they want to keep India in trouble. Because having trouble in Bangladesh is like having a blister in your armpit for India. You do not want that.
Right. Right. Wow. And do you have any plans on going back to Bangladesh anytime soon?
I was planning to. I had my tickets bought and everything, but 2 days before my flight, my home was attacked.
Oh God. Wow, this is just so heartbreaking. I am very grateful to you for taking the time to explain all this, and I'm going to do my best. Again, my audience is very small, but I will do my best to spread this word within the power of my little corner of the universe. Um, this is heartbreaking on every level, and as a person who spent most of his life solving problems, it's just so frustrating, infuriating that I don't see an angle towards making things better here. Is there anything that can make it better?
Yes, you could help. You could help. There are some organizations in USA who call themselves Islamic organizations, but they basically fund terrorism through various channels. Yeah. So one of them is ICNA. Then there is ISNA. Then there is MUNA. So maybe you can reach out to your Congress people and you can ask them to audit them, like where they're getting their money from and what they're doing with it. So end of the day, if there is trouble, there is money. Someone is paying for it.
Right. Right. Yeah, and you cut off the money, you cut off the head. Really, that works in
Exactly.
politics, and it works in war, and it works in every aspect. So Okay, well, I will definitely look into that. I will definitely spread the word among my political friends, and uh, that's about the limit that I could do. I can't pick up a gun, but I can pick up a microphone, which is basically what I
I
just did.
No one should pick up a gun. Every time someone picks up a gun, that gives the other person a reason to pick up a gun as well.
Wow, that's beautiful. Yeah, yeah. The problem is, what do we do when the people, idealistic
So,
people without guns, are being attacked by people with guns?
so we are all talking about human rights. Yeah, we are all talking about the five basic human rights and everything. Yeah. So
Yeah,
food, accommodation, medication, education, and stuff like that. But we are talking about democratizing the world. We are talking about freeing the people of the world. But the most important right for any human being, the right to a natural death. What are we doing about that?
yeah. And in this country, we call it life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And it sounds like none of those are available in Bangladesh these days, and
So,
that needs to
what is
change.
the point of freedom? What is the point of freedom of speech? What is the point of democracy? What is the point of anything when the people don't have the right to a natural death?
Right, right. No disagreement. No disagreement whatsoever.
I mean,
Oh boy.
as a Jew, you will know that better than anyone. You and your people, you had been persecuted for last 5,000 years.
Yes,
So
to this
you
day.
know what it's like.
Yeah, no, I definitely do. I don't practice the religion. I choose my own spiritual path. But on October 8th, I woke up. I went to sleep October 6th as a citizen of the world, and I woke up October 7th as a Jew, tribally, if not religiously. But I get it. Yeah, it's been 5,000 years of this. It's horrible. Obviously, we could spend another hour talking about that, but I wanted to focus on Bangladesh for this
Thank you
conversation.
very
But
much.
your point's well taken. That I definitely understand persecution. It's horrible, whether it's white, black, brown, or yellow. And right now, what's happening in Bangladesh, the eyes of the world need to open up to this. And you make a very good point. You said it earlier in the podcast, imposing democracy. Democracy doesn't necessarily mean freedom. Freedom means freedom. Democracy is a form of government that doesn't work everywhere. So if we take nothing else from this, maybe the warmongers in our government, because in a way, this spread of democracy is like the Crusades. We're trying to spread our way of life around the world. It doesn't work for everybody.
Yeah,
Neither does Christianity.
democracy is a democracy. I mean, there is a running joke in the global south. Yeah, democracy is a U.S. export, typically delivered by B-52s.
Wow. That saying might end up on Twitter before today's over. Well, I don't want to call you by name. I want to protect your anonymity. So, Mr.
Thank you
Perfect,
very much.
I really thank you. I hope this isn't the last time we speak. And I
No,
hope
we shall keep in touch. We shall
Yeah.
keep in touch, and I will keep you informed about the developments.
All right. Well, I'm gonna stop recording now. So I'll say the magic words. The boomers, plural this time. The bloomers, bloomers. The boomers. I'm not sure if you're a boomer, but you're an honorary boomer for this conversation. The
I'm
boomers.
I'm 40 plus. I'm 40 plus. You can call me a boomer.
You are a boomer. The boomers have blathered. And I'm gonna stop the recording right now.
Thank you very much.
And anyway, that interview was done yesterday. That was Sunday morning, March 9th, that I had that conversation. What an incredible guy! My lack of geopolitical expertise was exposed. I don't care. That's okay. I'm not embarrassed. I never claimed to be some kind of geopolitical expert. I'm just a boomer who blathers, and I toss my opinions out there. So anyway, the people who are watching live, I think most of you probably didn't tune in till the beginning. This entire interview will be on YouTube and on Twitter, so you can watch the whole thing. I'm going to go back to my normal live spot Tuesday night, 9 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock 6 o'clock Pacific time, and 7 a.m. Dhaka Bangladesh time. I hope that you've learned as much as I did from this interview. And I'm going to say something I never say during my podcast. Please like and share this video. You know, it bugs me when I watch other podcasters do the whole like, share, subscribe. They have the little fancy arrow thing pointing to what you're supposed to do. I won't do that for my normal blathers, but I think this is a very, very important one. This is probably the most important segment I've ever done. I really do hope to speak to him more. He messaged me, and he'd like to know if I have questions for him. We'll go on again, and he'd like to answer questions, and he'd like the questions in advance so he could contemplate the answers and do research if necessary. So please, if you have questions for this fellow, he will be on again. We will talk more. I'm so very grateful. I know I keep saying it, but I really am, that he took the time to speak to me. You know, just an old hippie who blathers. And he's obviously quite a citizen of the world with a lot of knowledge about what goes on. Anyway, if you have questions for him, or if you have something the UN has done that's actually good that I can present to him, please send me a direct message on Twitter, now known as X, at Ugly Nasty Guy 714, UNG 714. We had 9 people watching live at the very end of this, lower than usual, but I have a feeling that this video is going to get shared widely. I hope it does, whether through this video or otherwise. Check out what's going on in Bangladesh. We hear all about Ukraine. We hear all about Israel. We hear some about Africa. We're hearing now about, oh my God, what's happening in Syria. Yikes. But this has been ongoing in Bangladesh. It's been, and it's what a sad history this country has. My friend who I just spoke to, my new friend, doesn't seem to have hope for a good outcome, but let's send some good vibes to Bangladesh. Let's just hope somehow those idealistic people, those people who just wanted to be a secular country and independent, their dreams are just being crushed, and it's really sad. So hopefully I've done my part sharing this. I want to continue to do that. I want to thank all the new followers I have on Twitter who've been tagging me in a lot of these posts. Some of the visuals that they've been sending me are disturbing. I'm not sharing them today. Anyway, I'll be back tomorrow night, my usual time slot, now that Mr. Trump isn't stealing my Tuesday night, 9 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Pacific time slot. I don't know. I can't believe he did that. That is absolutely the worst thing this guy's done, President. He stole the Blathercast time slot. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. Let me quit while I'm ahead. Again, I hope you enjoyed it. Please go back and watch the whole thing. It's really worth an hour of your time. And for now, I'm just going to say the boomer once again has blathered. See you guys tomorrow night.